Previously on Lost.
She's like, where were you? And he's like, what are you talking about? You've been out in the jungle with Locke for the past 4 days and you haven't brought anything home. What are you really doing? He's like, oh, well, we're looking for Claire. She's like, I thought there was no more trail. He's like, well, at least I'm doing something. You're worthless. So Saeed asks Shannon to help him translate the papers, and at first she's a little leery about it. She's like, did my brother put you up to this? I assure you, your brother did not do anything to me. He's going off with Locke and doing God knows what. This is Lost Part 12. It is an episode dedicated to Boone and Shannon, and it is the episode entitled Hearts and Minds. Okay, at the beginning of the episode, Boone is off sitting by a tree, and he sees out in the distance that Shannon's sitting by herself. They're standing. They're supposed to be sitting. I'm sorry, I didn't draw them that way. But Saeed comes up to give her a gift, and it ends up being like clothes he found in the wreckage and whatever, and Shannon's like, oh, they're actually my size. Anyways, you go right into a flashback. Boone's in L.A., and he's playing tennis with his girlfriend or whoever she was, and all of a sudden he gets this call from Shannon. And she's like, please come, things are not good. And he's like, okay, well, where are you? I'll come and get you. She's like, Australia. So back on the island, Boone goes and tells Saeed, stay away from my sister. For a second there, I thought you were giving me an order. He's like, it's just some friendly advice. I would stay away from her. And then Locke calls him off. He's like, Boone, let's go into the jungle and do what we do. So Boone goes with Locke out into the jungle. And so they're going off to go get, remember, they uncovered the hatch, and they're going to go and uncover it again. So out in a different part of the jungle, Jack runs into Hurley, and Hurley's like, dude, I'm having like digestive problems because I keep eating all the fruit. And he's like, why don't you eat fish? He's like, Jin just doesn't like me. He doesn't want to like give me fish. Hurley leaves because he's suddenly got to go to the bathroom. Jack runs into Kate, and she's collecting seeds, and he finds out that she's helping Sun make a garden. He's like, how did you do this? She said, oh, it was all Sun's idea. And he's like, wow, it's a really good idea. Meanwhile, out in the distant part of the jungle, Boone and Locke are trying to figure out how to open the hatch. Boone's like, what do we do? He's like, well, that's why I've been sitting out here. That while they were talking, Locke was mixing this, I don't know, some kind of paste or something in a bowl. So in the next flashback, Boone goes to Sydney, and he arrives at the house where Shannon's at. She's got this big Australian boyfriend, and she's like, oh, it's a bad time. Why are you here? He's like, are you kidding me? You called me. And he's looking at Boone, and while he's not looking, Boone sees that she's got like this bruise or something on her head. So she's like, come back later, please. He's like, okay. She doesn't want the boyfriend to know that he knows that he is beating her. So back on the island, Boone and Locke are, I guess, walking back to camp, and Boone's telling Locke that he needs to tell people what they're doing, and Locke's like, they wouldn't understand. He's like, well, I have to at least tell Shannon. He's like, why? He says, and Boone says, because she's my sister. People on the island think that we're coming out here and doing monkey love. Locke's like, okay, fine, you sure you thought about this? And he's like, yes, definitely. Locke's got all these knives, so he takes his frickin' knife and hits him on the back of the head when he's not looking. So the very next scene is Boone's all tied up. Locke is like, I'm doing this for your own good. And then he takes the paste that he was making and he puts it on his head because there was a wound, so he puts the paste on his head. And Locke puts a knife in the ground just in front of Boone, just out of his reach. He can lean forward a bit, but he can't quite reach it. And he says, you'll be able to cut yourself free when you get the correct motivation. And Boone's like, I haven't given you enough. You have to tie me up too? Don't leave me here, Daddy. And then Locke walks away. Okay, elsewhere on the island, out near the shore, Hurley comes along and asks Jin, knows that he can't speak English, but he's like, dude, can you please just tell me where I can find fish? Jin's like, and I don't even know if I said something real there, but anyway, he ends up not helping him, so Jin's got his net. And so he's like, fine, never mind, I'm just going to go ahead and leave. And he was actually out in the water, but he steps on like a sea urchin and his foot's hurting. And he's like, oh my God, dude! So Jin helps him, and he's trying to tell Jin, like, you gotta pee on it, you gotta pee on it. And Jin's like, no. In yet another flashback, Boone tries going to the police in Australia to say that, you know, his sister is getting beaten up, and they're like, well, without physical evidence and a complaint from her, we can't do anything. So he decides to go to the boyfriend. He says, I'll give you $25,000 to break up with her and not have her have contact with her again. He's like, it's close to $50,000. So he's like, okay, so he gives him a check for $50,000. Boone was either sleeping or unconscious or whatever, but off in the distance, he hears someone calling help. And he finds out that it's Shannon. Then, all of a sudden, he hears the monster coming in the distance, in the direction that Shannon is. You can't... Again, it does not have a face. I'm drawing a face to show you that it's the monster. It's way off in the distance. So he eventually does reach the knife and cut himself free, and then goes off to cut Shannon free. Back at Son's garden, Kate is helping her plant stuff and do all this stuff, and she's like, well, I really wanted to travel and explore islands. I guess this falls under the category of careful what you wish for. And then Son smiles, and she's like, oh, you understood that. You speak English? And Son's like, please, don't tell anyone. And she's like, oh my God. And she finds out that Michael knows, and that Jin doesn't. And Son says, it's complicated. She's like, how? She's like, I love him. And she says, I don't understand. She's like, have you never lied to a man you've loved? I wonder if she has. Well, in the next scene, Hurley limps back into the caves, and he's got his bandage on his foot. And Jin feels sorry for him, I guess. And then he gives Hurley a fish. In the next flashback, Boone goes to the house where Shannon's at, and it's like, because he knows that he paid off the boyfriend, and is like, let's go. But the boyfriend walks in the door behind him, and he's like, oh, you have no idea what's going on. Basically, Shannon set him up. Their parents got married when they were young. And when Shannon's father died, his mom took all the money and didn't give any to Shannon. So she's basically trying to get money through Boone out of the mother. He gets mad and was calling Shannon names, and then he's like mad, and then these two get into a fight. So he goes and he unties Shannon, and they're running from the monster, and it stops following them for a little while, and she's like, why did Locke tie us up? And he finally tells her that, oh, we discovered this hatch, and that's what we've been doing. We haven't really been looking for Claire. He didn't want me to tell you. And she's like, why? I don't understand. Then the monster comes out of nowhere. They start running again, but then the monster gets Shannon and like starts to eat her. In the very next flashback, Shannon goes to Boone's hotel room. Remember, he got beat up by the boyfriend. And she tells him, he left with the money. He took everything. He's like, oh, so the player got played. She's like, but I know why you came. Now remember, they're step-brother and step-sister. She's like, you're in love with me. He's like, no, I'm not. She's like, yes, you are. And then they start kissing and macking, and then they get on the bed and start, like, doing it. Well, back on the island, Boone is searching for Shannon because the monster took her, and he comes across this stream, and he sees her laying on a rock, and she's like all bloody and gross and just totally tore up, and like realizes that she's dead. So he gets really pissed, and it's dark time by now. Remember, he still has the big-ass knife that Locke gave him. He finds Locke at the caves and starts attacking him. Like, oh, you did this to me. She died in my arms. And he's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, how come you don't have any blood on you if she died? Who are you talking about? He's like, Shannon died. And he sees in the distance that Shannon is talking to Saeed. He's like, what the hell did you do to me? That stuff you put on my head, you must have drugged me. He's like, it made you see her die? He's like, yeah. He's like, how did that make you feel? He's like, I felt relieved. He's like, exactly. It's time to let go. Follow me into the jungle. Again, what the hell do those two need to do in the jungle at night? That's how the episode ends.